When the ballot opened and we were looking at the graphs, it was just a hockey stick kind of event. I believe we've got these incremental improvements we make every year that makes London Marathon the biggest event and the best event across the whole globe. If I go and meet a vendor and they say, yeah, we can do everything, we can solve world peace, we do it all yesterday, that's a red flag for me. If you release something that's low quality, it breaks, it doesn't work, you lose trust and you lose reputation. And so that's high impact then. AI will disrupt the workflow of each individual and how we do our work more than it being an end consumer experience. This AI thing is going to happen, we're going to just throw everything at it. And then what I see is a lot of silent graveyards.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Joe Condon, this is Jay Stewart, and today we're joined by Bhavesh Vaghela from London Marathon Events. Bhavesh, welcome.
Thank you, good to be here.
Thank you. Maybe we could just start with, you're obviously off the back of the most recent London Marathon, and so I don't get the numbers wrong, 1,338,544 entries for the next one.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, mind-blowing. And when the ballot opened and we were looking at the graphs, it was just a hockey stick kind of event. And then when we were doing, when there was a push from the BBC, for example, the runners high after the people have finished the marathon and, they get to the finish line saying they're not going to do it again. They get home and go, I want to do it again. Yeah. So you see these peaks, but phenomenal kind of numbers there of the number of people who really want to be part of something great, which is the London Marathon.
Yeah, I mean, there's a runner's high, but there's also a spectator's high. I wasn't running, but I had friends running this year. And I think it's like one of those only situations in London or in any big city where like the mood is just incredible, vibes incredible, everyone like willing everyone to do so well. Yeah. And I don't think there's many like, sports is great at doing that, but like mass participation, like everyone is really willing people over that line. Yeah. Especially it was a hot day.
It was a really hot day, not as hot as last year.
Yes.
But it was still a hot day. But it's the joy. That's the thing. When joy is a contagion, and when you see all these people who, London becomes the best place to be during marathon week or even just the weekend. Everyone's really welcoming. They let you on the train. There's some, some social clips about the guy who's on the tube and everyone was clapping from the other side. That typically doesn't happen in London. No. If you ask someone for directions, they'll walk away really quickly. Yeah. Everyone becomes very open, very connected, wants to help each other out. And that's the best of humanity. That's one of the things that comes through. What that means is the joy and the contagion means that people can get inspired. So one of our things at London Marathon Events is our biggest mission is to inspire activity. And that is for the people who are running, but also for the spectators to then in the future want to then run an event. So it's that joy that brings people along. It's the high emotional kind of peaks because some of them fan zones are crazy, right? Some of the fan zones, Rainbow Road, like it doesn't matter who you are, you're welcome. You can come. It doesn't matter what language you speak, where you're from, what your background is. It's a very inclusive weekend. We have the mini marathon. We had 19,000 kids running. Daddy Pig and Joe Wicks were there. It was just, seeing these kids run 2.6 kilometers or 1 mile, getting to the end and then cheering and believing the achievement they've done. And it's the same finishing line as the elites and everyone else. So, and then getting their medal, that joy that the kids get is something that they remember. And then again, over time, hopefully, they then participate in other events, either with London Marathon or others, but as long as they're keeping active, it's all good.
A very long-running and successful relationship with BBC, which gives you terrific profile, terrific coverage. How important now that we have a situation where for years people are talking about declining audiences, declining importance of broadcast and so on. How has that changed, and is it still as important to you as it was a few years ago?
Yes, absolutely. So what you'll see is culturally, and this, I interview lots of people, spectators and participants, to understand kind of what's their psyche, what do they do. People have marathon breakfasts where the whole family or friends get together, they watch the BBC, and they do the marathon breakfast. They watch the marathon, they watch the elites going over the finishing line. Other things people do is they look at iPlayer. So even if they're not there, they can use iPlayer to be able to view their loved one going past the finishing line. Because on the app, you can track where they are. and then you can see them on the finishing line and there's the crossing. So lots of different things that happen, but super important, because again, that inspiring activity only happens when you have as many eyeballs of people watching things either live, through iPlayer, and then through social media. So super, super important.
There's two things that I'd love to get to in a minute. One being the Elite, because obviously there was a huge record broken this year too. But then two, the app, because I think it's incredible. I'd love to kind of dive into that as well.
Sure.
But maybe just for everyone, for context, would love to kind of dive into your, I guess, your road to the marathon as well.
Wow.
And then a bit more about your role there now.
Sure. So very potted history in terms of my achievements and you know, kind of all the things I've done. And I thought about this for this conversation around what's the common themes. So I started in defense, guided weapons, air-to-air missiles, you know, these crazy things that you see, unfortunately now in the wrong hands. But what I really enjoyed was complex problems. That was kind of common theme number one. I moved from defense into consultancy. Then I spent a lot of time in banking, a lot of time with digital apps, websites, managing platforms, managing technology. From there, I moved into cybersecurity. I'm trying to prevent fraud for banks. So I joined a startup, and we ended up doing identity and authentication for very big, well-known banks. From there, I moved into travel. And worked for a company called Priority Pass, so giving people access to airport lounges and airport experiences, because travel is one of those things that you can elevate experiences from, you know, from leaving your house all the way through to getting to a destination. There is a gap there that is filled by the product like Priority Pass. And from there, then moved into London Marathon. And my common themes are complex problems, launching products, is really, that's my runner's high, is launching products, getting things into market, seeing people use your product, sitting on the train and seeing people using the product that you've put together, or all the thinking you've put into that onboarding journey or that experience, all brings that kind of joy for me. And then lastly is the impact on society. And the big pull for me for London Marathon, the biggest pull was the impact it has on society. Our main mission is inspiring activities, which again, it's not about financial gain. It's nothing like that. It's about inspiring activities. And we do so many things to inspire activities, from our children and young people strategy, MBA 3x3 that we do at Trafalgar Square, swim, running events, all these things inspire activities. And what's really nice about London Marathon is we are a charitable organization. So all the profit we make then goes to the foundation. And then the foundation grants that out to organizations that are inspiring activities, such as Junior Parkrun. We invest in Junior Parkrun to make it a reality. So these things then drive that cyclic benefit for society, and that impact was my real big pull. So complex problems, really launching products, and having a high impact on society. They were kind of my three key common themes for all the things I've done so far.
Really cool. Really cool. I guess everyone knows London Marathon for one day a year, right? But there's another 364 across the year. And obviously London Marathon Events has a portfolio of events too that are across the year. Maybe we could just dive into, obviously, everyone knows that it's a big lift to do for that one day of the year, but the product and technology journey is across the year as well, so that it all runs smoothly on that day. The app was one of the things that I think is incredible, like being able to track friends and family that are running around. You're lining up your tubes so you can get around and see people running, which I think it just enhances the experience so much. But I'd love to maybe dive into, obviously that's been around a few years now, but like I guess that journey, and I guess what technology and kind of product focus is at London Marathon as well.
Sure.
Because I guess from the sports perspective, technology is still, I would say, underserved within the industry.
So it's the common question I get asked: what do you do for the rest of the year? You've done London Marathon now. It's easy sailing. And actually, we have over 25 events, either through white labeled that we support and put on, through to our own events. So Bath, Brighton, we've just done the London Marathon. We've got Standard Chartered City Race. We're going to be doing the Big Half. We have Swim Serpentine. So the list goes on. We have an international event that we bought this year, which is Frankfurt Marathon. And we have a strong and mighty team in Germany, in Frankfurt, that puts on that event. So there's lots and lots of events going on continuously. But there is peaks and troughs. And so what we try to do is we think about our ways of working in product and tech to say we need to gear up to make sure that let's use London Marathon is an absolute success, and be that app, all the simulation testing we have to do. Mm-hmm. We had people from my team running parts of the race course just to make sure the GPS worked pre-London Marathon. So much testing goes into launching an event day app to make sure that not just the runner's experience, but the fans' experience. Because if someone's come down to see their loved one, the worst thing that can happen is they miss them because something didn't work from technology. So they're the key kind of concentration things that we have to do. Make sure the website works, make sure that all the information is there for the runner, that whole runner's journey coming into the running show. And if you've not been to the running show, it is amazing. You have these people coming in, we have on-demand printing, there's a huge technology setup behind the scenes to make sure that's a reality. You get your bib, you go through a whole journey of seeing all innovations and seeing, going through our New Balance, the New Balance store. Lots of people buy lots of merch from there. Then they go through and see all our kind of partners and sponsors and other kind of merchants who want to sell things related to running. And then you finish the t-shirt and then you leave. And it's a whole experience. So it's a whole day where you get to hear people talk. We get famous people on to talk about what they need to do, tips about how they need to run the marathon to really help people on that kind of elevated emotional experience and anxiety and reducing that anxiety. To answer your question on kind of what a typical day looks like. So coming up to an event, lots and lots of things which are BAU. Make sure things are working, testing, launching, getting things all set up, make sure all the data pipelines work, make sure our CRM works, all these kind of BAU things. Once the event's done and we've done wash up, and we really believe in retrospectives, really doing hot debriefs, really understanding what went well, celebrating that, what we need to do better, and make sure them then get actioned in. And that's not just in my department or my area, it's across the whole organization. And that's why I believe we've got these incremental improvements we make every year that makes London Marathon the biggest event and the best event across the whole globe. And then once we've done the hot debriefs, we then look to drive innovation. That's the strategic view. So I call it ambidexterity in thinking. So how I look at things is one eye on the ball around what we need to do now, but also looking at what's happening and what we need to try. And the perfect thing is because we've got a portfolio of events, I have a number of other events where I can do small experiments. But on paper, things look great. You'll have a vendor come in and say, we can solve everything you need. And I go, okay, great. Let's try it on a specific event. We test it, it doesn't work. There's things that we didn't think about or things that doesn't actually work. So on paper it works, in reality it doesn't work. So then we use all the other events as an experimentation platform in real life and drive innovation that way with the view that if we can and it works, we will then deliver that into the London Marathon.
A couple of things. One, with the app and the sophistication of the app, how long did it take from when you said, let's do this so that people can follow the people they want to follow?
Yeah.
So how long did it take from coming up with the idea and blank sheet of paper to actually deciding that you were going to use it at the big event? That would be one thing. And maybe we could take that first. And then the other thing I was going to ask you is, because you mentioned vendors, you can't do this all by yourself, all of these things. I mean, you must have a lot of technical or technological partners that are involved to help you solve those problems. So that was a second question is how many and how do you find them? So the first thing is how long?
So how long for the app? So we're building on something that's already been there and well established. We have really strong connections with our vendors. So for TCS London Marathon app, TCS build the app for us. And what we then do is every year we will build on what was there before, use the retrospective to say what we need to improve on, and then drive innovation. So essentially, we've started to think about what that roadmap looks like now. In anger, we'll probably start putting stuff together and start developing the journeys and experiences by September. And then we'll have a first beta draft probably for us to start using in our hands January time, with a view that then it's ready for April for the big event. So it ramps up in terms of effort, but we're continuously driving improvement to make things better for the spectator and for the participant as well. In terms of how I choose vendors, I've been around a long time. I look younger than I am. What that means is you get a sixth sense on what is good and what's not. And you get a really clear view of what is AI generated fluff and slop versus what asking specific questions. So how I will choose vendors is either if they're trusted already, I've used them in the past and I know they've got a good record, but I look for the kind of relationship based understanding of a customer. So if I go and meet a vendor and they say, yeah, we can do everything, we can solve world peace, we do it all yesterday, that's a red flag for me. What I'm looking for is curious vendors to say, this is what we have, let's have a discussion, how do we solve the thing together? Because not one vendor can solve everything in one go. So I look for vendors based on relationships, past experience, either with myself or with people I know in my network, because I have a really strong network of product and technology specialists. So I'll go out to them and say, hey, I'm looking for an X. Could you give me some recommendations? And I'll use that as my first starting list, so to speak. And then once they're in and we're using them, then there is obviously a continuous improvement plan. So every QBR will be around how do we drive things better? How do we drive things higher quality, but also how do we improve the cycle time? For me, everything should have been done yesterday. That's kind of how I live. And I live like that because I think life's too short. So I can't wait for tomorrow because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So for me, everything has to happen very quickly. So there's an agency that I have just naturally inbuilt since I've been since I was born, I guess. So I want things done, but I also know that I don't want slop. So I want to make sure the quality is there. So not at the detriment of quality. So if you release something that's low quality, it breaks, it doesn't work, you lose trust and you lose reputation. And so that's high impact then. So if a customer comes in, they can't use it, it doesn't work, that's it. You've lost that customer. So making sure that you balance speed with quality is super important.
I guess you want to talk around like momentum and, you want to innovate, but you also want to make sure that the experience is good.
Yep.
And obviously there's 1.3 million people that have applied to run next year.
Yep.
I'm intrigued, like obviously for them, like how do you obviously a lot are going to miss out maybe.
Yep.
There's obviously a ton of different ways that they could engage across the year, but I guess their journey towards, whether it is running in the marathon and running in some of your other events,
Sure.
it's I'm intrigued like how you keep in touch with that audience.
Let them down gently.
Let them down gently. And that's what happens, right? So once the ballot's been drawn, we send 1.2x million sorry you didn't get in emails. But we think about the journey as on-ramps. So it doesn't mean that they didn't get into the London Marathon through the ballot, but they can also run through a charity.
Mm-hmm.
So we will then on-ramp them onto a charity. Then the charities also have, as part of the ballot form, you choose the charities that you're happy for them to get in touch with. So there's the whole charity kind of ecosystem that then kicks in. But then charities can say, hey, sorry you didn't get in, but hey, do you want to run for us? Again, there's a whole piece there. Wider than that, as I said, we have a whole portfolio of events. So we will also then make sure that we're guiding them through other events we can have. So for example, in this year's ballot, if you were not able to do, if you wanted to, through the free journey, you could also buy Brighton Marathon.
Really cool.
So, you could then do Brighton Marathon if you didn't get in.
Yeah.
So there's all these on-ramps that we try to do. And, for international, we had Frankfurt and we had Lisbon as international. So if they didn't get into London Marathon, there's still something that drives an on-ramp into inspiring activity. What that means for us is we're trying to give an experience. It's not the London Marathon, but it's still an experience, and it's a very different experience. So each one of our events has a totally different vibe. and people like specific experiences for that.
Yeah.
So we, through Caledonia Events, which is one of our subsidiaries, we do the Loch Ness Marathon. Again, the Loch Ness Marathon is beautiful. I've not done it myself yet. However, it's very calm. It's very scenic. And that's a different segment of people that is being serviced. So again, just thinking about that on-ramp view, we do disappoint a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's inevitable, right? With
yeah.
such a demand, where the demand is outstripping the capacity, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people. However, for people who have bequested, donated, they will get the running jacket, but they will also get an on-ramp into one of our other events if they wanted to. And then people just continue to try. And, you know, it is like a lottery, but it's not gambling. It's around making sure that we're very fair, and we offer out the places that we have to as many people as we can.
I think, like you say, everyone has a very different way of wanting to engage with mass participation.
Sure.
And I guess, like, you know, gamification has become a huge part of it too, like tracking your runs, whatever else as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys have got Cooper Investment, you've got Friday Night Lights as well. You work with Park Run too, right?
Yeah.
Like, these are all, as you say, on-ramps, I guess, to some degree, to get people into your funnel. So I'd love to talk around how you work with those kind of partners too. So
Sure.
I guess there's a whole community aspect around it that then feeds into doing a more structured kind of race too.
Sure, absolutely. So if you think about the top of the funnel, there's going to be different reasons why people run. We talked about spectators being inspired and going, I'm going to do that next year, because they see the joy in the runner, they feel the vibe, they ride that wave. So if we think about Friday Night Lights, for example, so I did the Canary Wharf run. We have, it's a subsidiary of ours. We have some investments in Friday Night Lights, and it's just a very, very different vibe. It's music, it's fun. Canary Wharf is a really nice place to run once all the roads are shut off. And typically when I'm running the Canary Wharf, I'm like, I work there. In my banking days, I've worked there. So and then there's music and a very party atmosphere at the end of it. And that's just a different segment of people.
Yeah.
And it's a 5K. So it attracts people who may not think they could do a marathon or a half or a 10K. It attracts a whole different segment of people. And that's an on-ramp. Off the back of that, they may get inspired to do a 10K. They may then get inspired to do a half, and they may get inspired to do a full marathon. So there's things like that we think about. Cooper, again, we work very closely with Cooper. It's our partner for coaching, and so talking to Dan, who's one of the founders of Cooper, it's all about how do we get people started? How do we help them with their coaching? And they have a blend mix of AI coaching as well as real coaching. Because what they've found, the gap in the market isn't just AI. Having an AI generated, here's your coaching plan, is good for some, but sometimes life gets in the way and you need to talk to a human. So they have that real nice blend so that a real human coach can then intervene when needed to really help you with that personalization plan. So if you imagine that on-ramp, I've now signed up for, or luckily enough, got into the marathon. My first holy smokes moment is now, what do I do next? How do I now move from I'm in to doing it?
Yeah,
and that's
5K
where
to 42K is slightly different.
exactly. And so how do I do that? And I may use ChatGPT, but we give on-ramps, so you can use Cooper, and then within Cooper you have a structured training plan. Like I said, the human interaction comes in if you need to, and that way you're safely training to be able to get to your goal of being able to do the marathon. And some people do it for what their like personal best is going to be, their PB. Some people just want to finish and cross the finishing line. And then to be able to say, I did the London Marathon, or I did a marathon, or I did a half, or I did a 10K. And so whatever you're trying to achieve, we try and provide that support structure through either subsidiaries, investments, or partners to help you on that journey. So we see the customer journey as not just you've done your marathon and here's your medal. It starts way before then. It starts with inspiration. Then it's training. Then it's actually taking part in the event. Then it's recovery. and then back to inspiration.
Yeah, I definitely fall into that second bucket of just wanting to finish. I guess you mentioned Cooper, and they're utilizing AI in different ways as well. So I guess it's everyone's favorite buzzword. Everyone, as you say, thinks that they can do absolutely everything with it.
Sure.
I would love to maybe talk around where you guys are using or planning to use AI from like a back end perspective, but then B, also look at, I guess you've got the consumer facing kind of side of stuff too, and how you're planning to use AI from that kind of experience perspective as well.
Sure. There isn't an event I've been to that don't talk about AI now. There's always at least 2 or 3 talks about AI. It's the word on the street, like innovation was maybe 10 years ago, where everyone was innovating, and before that it was agile and delivering things in agile and sprints. So some of that, when I go to events and I read things, some of it is just smoke and mirrors. Some of it is not real, but some of it is actually quite thought-provoking and thinking about, well, how can we use AI? So my personal view is AI will disrupt the workflow of each individual and how we do our work, more than it being an end consumer experience, but it will be as well. And what I mean by that is how you do your work 5 years ago is very different to what you do now. And that can be things like how you set up your agents to create, and I'll use product as a example. Historically, maybe 5 years ago, a lot of your time was writing out your PRDs, what you're trying to achieve, what's the problem you're trying to solve, then lots of critiques to see if you're on the right track, and then briefing the engineering team to see what's doable, what's feasible, and then working with the designing team to create a prototype, and then to test that. And that's weeks or months of work. That's fundamentally changed now. Everyone's become builders. You can now use Claude Code, you can use Codex, you can use whatever your choice is, Copilot, whatever your choice is, to really help you become a builder. Move away from having any constraints in that build cycle and getting something out to market quite quickly. And I think that's where the major disruption is going to be, is around how people's workflows work going forward. And everything in that workflow. So if you think about a value chain, everything from concept through to launch, marketing, and then post-launch optimization, AI can disrupt all them flows. And it is disrupting all them flows. I think there is still a hype. I've heard of, and I won't mention the vendors' names, where AI will solve everything. And I can only imagine that that's where some of the conversations are, where people are like, oh, let's just throw it on AI. But why? And we talked before where around the cost of doing things, the cost of tokens is is skyrocketing. And if you're incentivized to use more tokens, or use more AI, and I get it, right? Because you want to enable your organization and your people to be using AI more. But if you're enabling them and measuring it on the cost of the number of tokens you've used, then you're going to get a real weird behavior where people are going to ask AI to order their cups of coffee and things that don't really add any value to the organization. And so it's really asking the question why, and what's the outcome we're looking for, and is AI going to help us? And I think it will help in the build, but do you need it at the end point where the customer is experiencing you as a product? That's a question you need to do. And note one other thing is, not everyone is all about AI. We live in a bubble. We hear it at every event we go to, every meeting we talk about, people are using it internally. But when you go externally and you talk to people who are not really into technology, they're maybe using ChatGPT, the free version, for some therapy or something else, or doing some searches. But that's about it. And there's your biggest segment. So really, we've got to be conscious that yes, AI is going to get more and more use at the kind of the bottom end of the funnel where the customers are using it. But there is 2 segments there. There's customers who are AI natives, and yes, you have to build for that. But at the same time, you can't force feed an AI thing to a customer who doesn't even know what AI is. So you have to make sure you do that balance. And where I see that kind of convergence is you'll have two segments of customers, and then over time you'll get one segment of customers who are very much AI native. But that takes a long time to get to. I think that answers your question.
Another question, though, is I think it's important to be clear. You obviously have used something that once upon a time you would call some rudimentary AI, which is machine learning, which is, it solves the problems, and this has been around for a long time. So it might solve a very large percent of the things that you do. And then there's this new AI, let's call it the newer AI, large language model AI, that goes on top of that. So I guess my question would be, how important is this new layer to you other than as a build proposition? In other words, you talk about it as a technologist, it's important to you. But how important is it to you as, let's call it an event or a brand, or as a consumer-facing reality?
So machine learning, and I'll get the dates wrong, but AI came around, like the term 1954. So it's been around for a long time. There's been a lot of AI winters where people have expected something to happen, and then it's not been possible. AI will take over the world. Oh no, it can't. We've got limitation on compute. AI will do this. Oh, it can't infer this. And so the thing has been 3 or 4 AI winters, let's say. Doesn't feel like this generative AI is a AI winter. Definitely not, because actually now compute power, the way that transformer technology works is revolutionizing how we use data. So the term has been around for ages. Machine learning is a well-established discipline. In the startup I worked on, the main thing I developed as a product was intelligence, and it was all machine learning models. And all that is still super valid. It's all still super valid, how good your machine learning model is, what's your data you're training on, because then you've got predictive intelligence. Where things are non-deterministic, I think AI can really help. So that layer is really important, but what's most important is what use case you're going to use for it. Because you could throw everything at a large language model and it will do some of it really well and some of it mediocre. Whereas you can think of it as maybe we just use machine learning for this. It's cheaper, it's more well established, you're going to get predictive results. It's more deterministic. Then we should use machine learning models, not just generative AI and large language models. And I think for me, you've got to find that balance. I see a lot of organizations, not London Marathon, who throw everything at AI, put all their investment in AI. This AI thing is going to happen. We're going to just throw everything at it. And then what I see is a lot of silent graveyards. And what I mean by that is lots of things that people have put a lot of money in as the new thing that generative AI is going to do for their product, then silently dies in the graveyard because the data wasn't there. It wasn't a real problem to solve. Coming back to my other point, just because it's easy to build doesn't mean you should build it. Because it doesn't solve a real customer problem. Why do you build it? And so what then they do is brush it under the carpet because you've now invested millions of pounds into this thing that didn't actually work. So then you and the reason why it's silent is because you don't want people to know that that's how much money you put in to a thing that didn't work. So then you just brush it through. And vendors, again, they want to ride the AI hype. So I see a lot of people on LinkedIn who are AI experts. Debatable. I call myself an AI alchemist. I'm not an expert. There's so much more I need to learn. And every day I'm learning. But I'm not an expert, and I've got 25 years in this this industry.
Imagine compared to us.
so when I see these people who are AI experts, and because they've vibe coded something, but they're selling stuff, and people who may think of, I've got this pain, the board's telling me I need to do an AI thing, vendors are telling me I need to do an AI thing, and someone comes along with a Kool-Aid of, hey, I'm the AI expert, let me come and make it a real thing. It doesn't work. It causes a lot of problems because then you get things that don't work, and then you get a real bad name, but you go, AI is a hype, it doesn't really work. But really what didn't work was you didn't do the thinking of what you're trying to solve and why you're using AI. So if you do that first, AI can be very successful. But if you just throw everything at AI and pray and spray, or spray and pray as I call it, and hope something sticks, a lot of things won't stick and you spent a lot of money.
Maybe we can talk around, because I think that's a good segue into product roadmap, and obviously you'll have like a short-term plan, a long-term plan, maybe even a medium-term plan. But I guess like, you know, external forces or internal forces, like they're trying to drive you in different directions, but you need to have that kind of North Star as well. So I'd love to, you know, talk around, like, obviously you'll have plans for stuff that's coming in 1, 2, 5 years. How do you, if you're a team, like react to those, whether it's internal or external forces, to make sure that, you know, the product or the reason you set out, the problem you set out to solve, you can still solve whilst, you know, being able to react to those kind of changes too?
That's a really interesting question. It's one that I've grappled with for many years in product. What I really like to do, like if you have a Gantt chart of a product, and you get this with vendors that come in and say, Q4 2029, we're going to have this widget thing that gets delivered. And I'm like, wow, they can see really far ahead. Because of the pace that things are changing, you don't really know what's going to happen then. So you're just basically putting a stake in the ground. And that's fine. So where I do my roadmaps is now, next, and later. And what that means is this is what we're going to focus on now. That's underpinned by metrics. That's underpinned about the outcome we're trying to achieve. Here's the things that we think we're going to do next. But again, they could move around, and we've got a little bit more thinking around there. Maybe there's some prototypes, some testing going on. And later are kind of our future bets. Doesn't mean that you don't start thinking about the later things and you don't start testing the later things. Well, we're not going to put all our investment into later if we've not got the focus on now. And what that gives you is agility in your deliverables. Because what you're focusing on now are your sure bets. The things that you want to experiment with, the things that you're clear on the outcomes. Once you've done the now, the ones that come from next or even later come into now, you can choose that based on priority. Now, one thing that people, and I've had this experience a lot, especially when working in a SaaS company where you're talking to customers and then they somehow believe that you're an extension of their dev team. And so what they want is the key priority. And coming back to the question, why is that a priority? Let me understand this. And it's like the customer success game, really, to figure out what is the outcome, not the output. But also, one of my key metrics is customer experience. What's in it for the customer? Because if you get the customer experience wrong and there's no value for the customer, whatever you're building, then you can forget revenue. Because the willingness to buy for that product, be it in a SaaS organization, be it B2B, and I've spent a lot of time in B2B or B2C, that value proposition needs to be there. So that's our North Star. We look at it from a customer's lens and say, will the customer benefit from this thing? There may be this huge innovation in technology, and technologists come around to build a solution, and everyone gets really excited, and they launch it and feel the dreams. And I think I read one of your newsletters where you talked about this. You build it and no one comes. Then you're wondering what happened. So then you invest loads into marketing, but you think it's a marketing problem. And then you may get a little blip. People look at it and go, oh, it's okay, but I don't need a basketball field or a baseball field, should I say. What I really want is a racetrack or a run track, right? So really, if you don't understand that customer empathy and the problem to solve for the customer and genuinely entrench it into the, you know, what's it going to be for the customer? It makes it more efficient. It's not going to work. Really think about that and have strong customer empathy. And strong customer empathy, there's no proxy. Genuinely, there's no proxy. I've been in organizations where you hire a research company that do lots of customer interviews, and that's all great. And you sit behind a white kind of a glass wall watching all this happen, but it's a proxy. Or you hire a company to do all the research, they send you a PowerPoint deck, and you miss out all the essences. So there is no customer proxy. You really need to be able to talk to customers, understand, hey, how do you train? What inspired you to do the marathon? Well, I was running or I was spectating my friends, and then, you know, I decided to, and I saw this thing on LinkedIn or this thing on Instagram. That's gold, because that's where you find the gaps, where the problems to solve are, versus just trying to think you're the customer and build something in your own eyes and not even validate that, because then you launch it, no one comes.
I guess, you know, from maybe even your team, a lot of them will be runners themselves, right? So I'm intrigued, like, obviously they get to test out all the tech beforehand. Sure. But I guess like, do you also yourselves need to look, as we were just talking around like that, in your own bias, I guess to some degree, if you're a runner, but you're
Sure.
a high-end elite runner, maybe the type of product or experience that you want is this. But if you're a casual runner and it's your first time, then the experience you need is this. So sure. I guess that's a tricky thing to navigate between, like, you obviously have your now or whatever. But like, how do you, building personalized catered experiences to them is tricky if you've got, two very different kind of objectives or what they want, let's say.
Mm-hmm. It comes back to customer empathy. Yeah. So there is a danger that you get homophily, I think is the word, where you get everyone who's the same as you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a runner until I joined London Marathon. We have a run club every Thursday. So today, 5K. We have a jog club on a Tuesday. Very slowly, but I've been inspired by inspiring activities, and I'm doing the big half in September. So I'm on that training plan. But there is a danger that you get people who are all runners and who all believe they know what the customer wants, mm-hmm. but they come from a very specific kind of background. So as a leader, I'm very attuned to this in terms of who I hire. So I want people who are specialists, but I also need generalists who have an outside-in view. So I look for diversity of thought. Mm. So diversity from a background perspective, social economic diversity. So, making sure that people come from different backgrounds and see a product in a different lens means that you get a more robust product. That's kind of one thing I look for. And I'll always stop people who go, well, I'm a runner and I would do this. I go, we need to validate this. Yeah. But anything that is a opinion of one isn't, unless it's really obvious, isn't really what the customer needs. So then we run lots of tests all the time where we're testing things, we're talking to customers. We have a whole panel of customers who thankfully are highly engaged, that we can talk to them. They will test out new experiences for us. They give us qualitative and quantitative feedback, and we try and use that and leverage that a lot more. But also it's about being conscious of your blind spots. Everyone has blind spots, everyone does. Because your worldview is based on your experience and values, and it's going to be different for everything. So the idea is to stitch people together who have very different worldviews, so you can try and cover as many blind spots, and then actively say, what are we missing here? Mm. Have we covered our customer segments? Or have we just built something that's only for the elites or the good fit age or the champs? And that might be the case. We might want to service just something for that segment. But if your majority are the masses, first-time runners, second-time runners, then you want to make sure that you service them in the right way. And the only way to do that is build customer empathy, have that curiosity, understand motivation, motivational theory, have a curious mind in terms of experimentation. I wonder how, wonder what these people are doing. Looking at adjacent industries, not even just in sports. Yeah. I use sports a lot. I read your newsletter, and that's not a plug. I've never been paid to say that. I read your newsletter. And it's just to see what other sports are doing. How are they doing their fandom? What's important to their fans? Doesn't mean it's the same, but it gives you a different perspective. And that nugget or that kernel of an idea can then pop into something really, really spectacular. So it's about trying to make sure you're scanning the market, having that diversity of thought, and being okay with being wrong and asking people, what am I missing here?
I mean, one of the things about the London Marathon and one of the I think the foundations of its success is that it's seen as a for good product. It's sure. not something that's seen as going out and taking the most that it can yep. from the market. Yep. I mean, there are some sports events we see where there's very, very high demand, and the price of being part of them, well, I didn't say that, goes higher and higher and higher, right? If you can imagine dynamic pricing for taking part in the London Marathon. Yep. But you've resisted that. Mm-hmm. So commercially, your model would be very based on your partnership relationships in terms of your commercial partners, your sponsors, your brands that you work with, and so on. So normally there's this data component to it where they want to know more about your people. Uh-huh. How do you navigate that relationship with your partners when there are all kinds of rules, and there are also your own internal rules that you want to follow in terms of sharing your knowledge? Sure. With your commercial partners?
Sure. So just to address the price point, we are very conscious that not everyone can afford 300, 400, 500, 600 pounds to do an event. So we try our best to make sure that the price point is affordable. And that's all around our inclusivity. We will do discount prices for the big half. There's discount prices for specific communities, because we want to inspire activities across the masses for people who may not be able to afford it, but we enable that to happen. So that there's a whole for good perspective there. Profit is important, but it's not the thing that drives our decisions. Very principled decision making happens, where we think about, is this right for the organization? But before that, is this right for our customers? And if it's not right for the customer, then we won't do it. Then in terms of the data sharing, obviously everything has to be within GDPR rules. The customer has control over that. We are very careful of what we share, because trust is super important. If a customer trusts you and your product, so 1.3 million people trust that if they get into the London Marathon, they're going to have the best experience of their life. If you speak to anyone who's done the London Marathon, they will always smile. They'll say, it was amazing, and I did it 19 whatever, right? 2000 whatever. And they'll always take the experience and the emotion with them. Why? Because we have a whole concentration of people who focus on that participant experience, making sure that there's the right water stations, making sure there's enough loos, making sure that the track was right across all our events. And so we will do what's right for the customer. Everything's trust-based. So we won't data share anything with our sponsors unless the customers agree to it. So but because we're such a strong brand, the benefit for our sponsors is they're associated to a strong brand. And that just helps us. This isn't a game of sharing, oh, here's a lead for you, said sponsor. That's not how we play. Because that would be very wrong for the participant, because if they're then getting said sponsored emails and they're like, well, how did this happen? That would erode trust. So we're very, very careful on how we share our data, what we share, and how we share it. And I just give you an example. So we used some technology last year for Vitality to understand, for a specific stand for a sponsor, what was the dwell time of people who were going past it. And what we found was 1 in 3 people who walked past that area stopped and saw that activation. And within that 1 in 3, 80% spent more than 5 minutes at that activation. That's powerful data for the sponsor, because then they understand what works, what doesn't work. And it's all around improving the customer experience.
I mean, like you say, that trust element, and really where it's sports, it's entertainment, it's games, like they're all fan-driven brands, right?
Yeah.
So like that trust element is super important. Like you have people's, uninterrupted attention, really. Like it's part of your identity, but really if you impact or you ruin that trust, then it's gone.
Yep.
And that's a really detrimental thing for a brand that's built around that. Maybe we can kind of shift it on and I guess look at what's next for London Marathon. I guess, you've got those short, medium, long-term plans. Like where, obviously there's the experience side from the actual race, but like, I guess for you guys, like what's next? Like what's the main challenge that you're looking to kind of solve next?
Sure. So from a kind of overall, we want to increase our impact. We want to drive more people who may not be active into activity. Be that from, a starting of a journey, maybe doing park run, maybe doing one of our events, maybe doing someone else's event. So that's kind of our biggest goal, is to really drive increased impact on society. So what we know is by just doing some exercise and some movements, the positive impact it has on people's mental health, physical health is phenomenal. And that's the thing that we're focused on, is how do we increase our impact? And you notice there, I didn't talk about anything around profits. What I'm talking about is how do we increase our reach? What does that look like? So we did an innovation this year for Brighton, which was we merged the trail run through Mavericks and the marathon. And there was a merge point. So people did their trail run then they got to a merge point, and then they had the same finishing line. That again brings two different diverse people together. One which is trail run, which is quite a quiet, in nature, uphill, very different muscle groups being used, very different segment, but then they get the cheer zone at the end. So we'll do more and more of them types of innovations, more and more of them kind of fusion events. But again, it's around how do we get more reach so we can inspire activities. And we have, and I can't talk about this much more than that, but we have some really amazing strategies around what we want to go after over this year and next year to really drive that kind of reach and impact.
Cool. And I guess, you've come from outside of sports and into sports.
Sure.
So I'd love to maybe round off by, I guess, your advice for, people that are in sports, working across technology, wanting to drive innovation. Like, what's the process? Obviously, you've got established processes within LME.
Sure.
But I guess, like, looking at, there are all these new shiny objects all the time. There are, you want to solve every problem that everyone comes to you with.
Yep.
Like, what's a way of them kind of working through that and really making sure that they're narrowing in on what's important?
Sure. So I always, and problem's the same outside of sports. Something you talked about in terms of technology maturity, I would, as a whole, in terms of an industry, I would say that sports, not all sports, but a lot of the sports, is probably where banking was in 2008.
Yeah. Before
the likes of Monzo, Starling, all these fintechs came out and really disrupted the business model. And people then thought, oh, we've got 6 million customers, we don't need to worry. And then now, if you look at these kind of fintech, if you can still call them fintech, they've taken over, right? And they can deliver things of high value at pace that customers really want, which has changed the expectation of what then the customers want. So I would say a lot of sports are still in that kind of, but this is not our thing, we're not a technology company, and that's all fine. That's just kind of where it is. Shiny toy syndrome or shiny thing syndrome is a thing across all industries I've worked in. Oh, that's a shiny thing, we should just go after that. But what I would say is, because the constraints of build and the constraints of getting something out into the market are becoming less and less. You can use agentic workflows, you can use Claude, you can use lots of different tools that are out there to very quickly build something at the other end. Where your focus needs to be in that right up front, what are we trying to do? What are our metrics? And metrics are really interesting because, KPIs, OKRs, there's a whole kind of cottage industry that can be produced in just metrics. But if you focus just on that, you end up in a cottage industry. But really thinking about what's the 1, 2, 3 North Star metrics we're trying to achieve, focusing and saying, and having that second order thinking. That's what I call simulation. The second order thinking is, okay, if I do this thing, then this thing, then this thing, will that impact the thing we're trying to get to?
Yeah.
And having that kind of being able to stitch things in air, because you've not built anything yet, and saying, is that something we want to cover? And then being able to have the agility to go, the thing we didn't work, how do we pivot? And the upfront thinking and strategy is where all the key skills are going to be and the creative ways of solving it, not the build side. So what I'd say to kind of organizations is wherever you are is wherever you are. I wouldn't worry. What I'd be thinking about now is what's coming down the line and how do we ride that wave in the right way where we're not going to bankrupt ourselves by throwing it all in AI. So some things don't need to be solved by AI. And, you end up with a solution trying to find a problem, and that's not where you want to be. You want to really think about what's the problem, and there's really, really amazing framework that Clayton Christensen put together, a Harvard Business Review professor, called Jobs to be Done. What is the job to be done? What is the thing that you're trying to achieve? And when you look at it and you talk to the customers, you'll understand all the workarounds. A customer is trying to achieve X, and these are all the workarounds they're trying to do. The customer is trying to train for a 10K, and they've asked all their friends, they put a spreadsheet together, they've got a Fitbit, these are all the workarounds they're trying to do. What can we do to solve that for the customer, make it one thing that they take off the thinking list? Now, having that kind of thinking for a participant and spectator really focuses on outcomes and problems to be solved. I think the other thing that we've not covered is experimentation. Yeah. I think that's super key because things go so quickly. you got to really validate your truths. And when I say validate your truths, it's not about launching something into production, which you could do an experiment with, but it's around doing as many experiments as you can, A/B testing, testing with cohorts, clickable prototypes. I still sit in coffee shops and get people to test my thing because seeing people use it, seeing their faces going, oh, that didn't work. Oh, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
That's gold. There are things that there's no proxy for. There's things that AI agents are not going to give. And if you're over reliant on AI, what you end up doing is becoming mediocre.
Yeah.
I think if AI is your multiplier, you're going to get massive improvement in results. But if you plus AI equals a number, but there's no multiplier, but you don't have the subject matter expertise, you're not really thought about the problem, you're just going to get mediocre results at best.
Yeah.
And at worst, you're going to get results that don't work. And then, you see, oh, AI, we can do all this design. I can see a website now and go, that was a lovable website.
Yeah.
That's been produced, and nothing wrong with it. That's been produced by Claude. That experience has been produced by this, Gemini. You can see it straight off.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be able to see it, but if imagine a world where everyone has the same experience and everything is all the same, it becomes very grey. And so creativity and how you creatively solve a problem and the problem you're trying to solve and prioritizing that, they're going to be the key skills of the future. That human relation, that customer empathy, understanding what's working, what's not working, how you pivot, they're going to be the skills of the future. And really thinking about that. And what's great about sports is lots of people have been in sports industry for many, many years, and they have so much strong understanding of their domain and their sports. Leveraging that and then using AI to be your multiplier is super key.
I think that's the key point, is that, like, how can you not be beige? How can you, really connect with your audience and show the humanity? Because I think that's, what a lot of people are losing by just solely, focusing on AI. So, Bhavesh, this is so much fun.
Really good fun.
Really good. We could sit here all day. Very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye now.